simultaneously taking from a supply chain which would help the global south through COVAX while hoarding, tens of millions of vaccines and standing in the way of the trips. I want to ask one more question.
Can I respond to that?
It was a statement. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. It wasn't a question. So through you, Mr. Chair, you talked about your tough negotiations with Pfizer. Pfizer, as we know, at the time of these tough negotiations, was pitching the federal government to bring new tax breaks, which included lowering corporate tax, providing tax measures such as manufacturing and processing credits. Is it safe to say that this government did not take that into consideration? Is it safe to say that we're not going to see these types of quid pro quo in the next upcoming budget?
Minister, if you have 15 seconds, please.
Well, I would actually just indicate to the honourable member that a number of instances during this session, he has asked questions that don't relate to my portfolio, this question included. This is a question for our finance minister. I'm not making this budget up. It's not in my portfolio. I am procuring vaccines, PPE, and taking care of a number of very difficult files in PSBC, and I'll continue to do that to the best of my ability. And that's what I have to say about that. Yeah, my sincere apologies for that, and I don't know what happened, but I'm back now and ready to answer any more questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Mr. Green, you have 6 minutes.
I'm going to start off. I'm going to set my politics aside for a moment. I just want to have a human moment, if that's possible, heading into this third wave after what has been a very long year, and say that I do appreciate that the minister continues to come back. And I feel like in this committee, it is often the case that things become fairly confrontational. And I want to just acknowledge that. And I want to acknowledge it in a way in which it is not personal when things get confrontational. There's a general feeling that I've been having in the way in which we do this work, where we have limited time, where it sometimes feels like, this is an I statement, that the questions that we're asking are not adequately answered. And sometimes it feels like witnesses and testimony to this committee seek to run the clock out in ways which don't provide us with the fullness of answers in which we're trying to actually get to. And I wanted to go on the record and say that, Mr. Chair, because I know your job is tough, and I know that we're all under a lot of pressure. But I want to note that I think that the minister in this particular role, in this particular crisis, has made an exemplary effort to continue to come back to this committee and to even avail herself after the technical difficulties. And I wanted to just say that with my first 1.5 minutes. Now, with that being said, I need to pick up where we left off, which was a disconnect, quite frankly, between the honourable minister, through you, Mr. Chair, and her ADM. So I'll ask the question to the honourable minister. Thank you. Honourable Minister, what impact, if any, has the risk-based pilot project had to streamline the defence procurements? What impact has it had on the national shipbuilding strategy?
Well, let me be clear that under our government, we are actually seeing ships coming in to the water under the national shipbuilding strategy. So that's the first point we got to remember. Ships are getting in the water as a result of our management of the NSS. In addition, the NSS has been able to benefit from the work that the shipyards have done over the years. So the risk-based approach that our team puts in place, it's not just as a general matter. It's on every single contract negotiation we entered into.
Perfect. Let's talk about that, because the Surface Combat Ship Program has gone from $26 billion to almost $80 billion. And I'm wondering what responsibility you will take as the minister involved in this procurement for 15 Type 26 ships, closing in on $80 billion with more, including delays. How are you going to get that under control?
Well, thank you for the question. And I want to start off by saying your question and the PBO's report is very important to us in terms of ensuring that we remain accountable to the Canadian taxpayer and to Parliament. It's extremely important to me.
Can I ask, which estimate do you take into your risk analysis? The Parliamentary Budget Officers or the Ministry of National Defence?
Well, I will simply say that the Parliamentary Budget Office amount is the amount that we are cognizant of, that we are following, and I will ask my Deputy Minister to emphasize any points I've left out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think a couple of points to raise. Number one, the risk-based approach results in less trips to Treasury Board where warranted, so it does make efficiencies inside government. I think on the second part of the question related to the Parliamentary Budget Officer's numbers, these are projections. There's always room for difference of opinions in terms of future costs and a long-term project. Our numbers, are numbers.
So you're not including the taxes? You're not including the taxes in your estimates?
Thank you, Mr. Matthews.
That's how you guys are doing procurement?
Thank you, Mr. Green. We'll now go to Ms. Harder for 5 minutes.
Perfect. Minister, earlier today in question period, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "We are concerned with the new reports coming out of the EU," end quote. So if the vaccines are guaranteed, as you're saying they are, then why is the Prime Minister concerned?
Two clarifications. First, the concern that I have and our government has is because what we're seeing across this world is vaccine nationalism taking hold. We are competing for vaccines in a very competitive global environment. And in that environment, we are still managing to get vaccines.
Why are you
into
concerned
Canada.
about the EU?
I am concerned about the EU and any other jurisdiction that is exercising vaccine nationalism because I seek to ensure that our
Will this have an impact on Canada? Will this have an impact on Canada?
Mr. Chair, surely we can let the minister answer the question. Mr. Chair, please.
It's not a point of order.
Please, would ask that the minister answer the question and in the time frame as quickly as possible, such that the member can have time to provide whatever questions she may have in her time frame. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I agree that the minister must answer the question, but in order for the minister to answer the question, she needs time to answer the question, which the member keeps interrupting. So it's very hard for translation services, and it's very hard for us to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd ask that everybody just relax and please calm down and take the time to ask the questions and respond appropriately. Thank you.
So just to clarify, Minister, you're saying then that there will be absolutely no interruptions with regard to the acquisition of vaccines. Not a single dose will be missing.
Well, just to clarify, Mr. Chair, what I'm saying is that we're operating in a globally competitive environment and we are very aggressive to make sure our vaccine deliveries get into Canada, and that's exactly what we're doing. That's why you're going to see 9.5 million doses prior to the end of March, 36.5 prior to the end of June. This is a tough environment, but we are a government that's aggressive about our vaccine procurements, and that's why you're seeing them coming into the country by the millions, 2 million this week alone.
Answer my question. No? Okay, I'll continue. So you said that there's 118 million that are coming in by the end of the summer, but we have a population of 37 million. Why do we need those additional doses?
Well, to begin, the majority of the vaccines that we've procured are 2-shot doses. So that is necessary to ensure that we have 2 shots per Canadian.
We still have an extra 40 million.
That's correct. But we want to make sure that we have enough for all Canadians who wish to have one. And if we have extra doses, we will share them with the developing world. So our commitment is to ensure that we are sharing doses that are not needed by Canadians. And that is part of the commitment that Prime Minister has made as well.
Earlier, you said that we have, and I quote, a world-class portfolio. So if the portfolio is world-class, then why are we currently 60th in the world for vaccine acquisition?
Vaccine acquisition?
For vaccine acquisition and rollout, we're currently 60th out of the entire world.
Well, I think let's be clear. It is interesting to me that you are using that particular stat. Could I ask what the author of that chart or stat is that you are referring to? I don't have it in front of me.
Where would you think we rank, Minister?
Well, I would wonder what stat you're using, because very much of this determines on the size of the country, the size of the population, the type of jurisdiction. Are there provincial governments?
It really doesn't actually, because it's based on per capita.
And it also depends on the type of vaccine that is being procured and the availability of that vaccine. So, for
Minister,
example,
are you proud of the fact that we're 60th?
Well, I don't acknowledge that we are 60th because you haven't shown me any documentation to prove that that's the case.
Minister, you haven't presented me with an alternative. Where would you rank us?
It's not a conditional point. What I'm saying is that
what sources would you like to look at, and what ranking would you offer based on those sources?
I will provide that to the committee if that is the direction that the member would like to travel.
I just asked the question and you weren't able to answer it. But what I can say is this. I can say that if we're 60th, but yet you as the minister who's responsible for this portfolio, you're saying that we have a world-class portfolio. So clearly us being ranked 60th cannot be the problem with the portfolio. So the problem then must be with the one who is responsible for the portfolio. Would you agree?
Oh, I do appreciate this very interesting question. I will simply say that we are at the very beginning of a very long vaccination campaign. And we cannot make decisions about winners in this race at this very early moment.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Ms. Harder. We'll now go to Mr. Kazmierczuk for 5 minutes.
Don't forget to like, dislike, subscribe, and comment. Safe Space Cafe. And always, have a good day.